If you've had any cryptid encounters that you'd like shared on here, email me at jgtosstories@gmail.com. Story 1. The first time we visited the land between the lakes was probably back in the summer of 2019. We had a Class C RV that we called Moon, and we lived in Indiana, so it was a bit of a ride to the park. When we got there, it was late. Everything was nice. We got to Sugar Bay, a campground on the Kentucky side close to the entrance of the campground. There was a spot that had a circle, and in the middle it went into the woods. This is the place where we would later encounter Dogman. We parked, and we all got to sleep, but I couldn't sleep. For a minute, the uneasy feeling of the park had settled in. Come next day, I thought nothing of it. I was excited to swim, but when we were swimming, I could have sworn I saw something tall on the other side of the lake. Like Bigfoot. I didn't know at the time, but the Tennessee side is known for Bigfoot, but I just brushed it off as a tree. Then, when we got back, it seemed as the uneasy feeling settled in for everyone. Not like you're being watched, but like you knew something inhuman was there. The next day we left. We had a lot of fun and said we'd come back when we had a bigger vehicle. The next time we came back was the fall winter time of 2020. We had a big black and white school bus that we turned into an RV. We arrived in the middle of the day this time and spent the day exploring the same camping spot in Sugar Bay. Again, it was peaceful. In the middle of the day, my mom came out and said, "Hey boys, smile. We're going to take a video for your Nana." I sadly can't get the footage, or I would, but we took the video. Everything was nice, but my mind genuinely just kept saying to go in the bus, so eventually I went inside, and I regret what I did because of what could have happened to my brother. He played out there for another hour or two, and nightfall came, and he came back inside while my dad made a campfire outside. He came back in, then me and my brother got put to bed. My only other sibling is my sister, and she got to stay up, but I'm laying in bed and everything is normal, and a little Honda Civic, who was on the top of the hill, owned by someone who was in a tent, drove by going 30 miles per hour. He left his tent and camping supplies. A few minutes later, a chill of fear hit me. Now I wasn't going to fall asleep. A few minutes after, we started to leave while everyone except my dad, who was driving, scrambled around. While we were leaving, I said, "Mom, why are we leaving?" multiple times. Finally, she answered, "We got ran off by Bigfoot, now go back to bed." Like 30 minutes later, I heard my mom talk about Dogman and the old campground attack. Even though I knew we were in a Walmart parking lot, I couldn't sleep because of the constant chills I got. What I know, a few days later at home, was that in the video from earlier, you could see a pack of them stalking us. 6 to 7 feet tall each, but one, obviously the alpha, was almost 8 feet tall, because he was the one that ran us out. Earlier that night, I learned this recently, my dad had seen his left tail light completely covered by a shadow. Keep in mind, we're in a bus. This is how I know the 8-foot tall one was the one that ran us off. Later, after that, my dad heard a thump, and when he looked in the mirror, there was a boulder, probably about 10 pounds, that was thrown like a pebble. Then my mom wanted to leave, because she looked in her mirror and saw red glowing eyes, level with hers, and she's on a piece of wood that covers the stairs, so we left. We stopped at the entrance place at the Kentucky side, and then went outside, since the bus was insulated and constant chatter. We didn't hear it. Get halfway up on the bus, on 2 legs, while scratching it, and then turned back, and that's how my mom saw it. And then, as they turned around to go back inside, they looked into the woods, and a pack of them were watching. And the eyes lowered, as if they got on all fours, and they ran to come out of the tree line. Thankfully, we got away, and then we got to the Walmart. We're kind of daredevils, so we went back to the same spot again in Sugar Bay halfway through the night. We left because of the sheer fright and went to a campground called Red Hollow, which is now known as Safe Hollow, because it's nice there. The next day, we explored an abandoned village and we split up. Me and my dad and my brother, and then my mom and my sister. Girls and boys, basically. A little later, we passed a footprint that was a foot long and a few inches wide. It had claws on it, as big as my palm, but I'm 13 now, so other than that, it was your average abandoned village. We all met up again, but when we were getting back in the bus, I looked in the tree line and saw eyes. They lowered and disappeared again, along with the figure I later found that all the areas I was in were either unknown or active dogman places. Story 2. I was on a ferry for a school softball trip off Kodiak Island, Alaska in 2014. At the time, I was 18. A whole bunch of us had snuck up on the deck around 11 p.m. to watch the waves and generally be teenagers on a boat without supervision. It was 11 p.m. in May in Alaska, so the sun was thinking about setting, but it was still bright outside. So we're just doing our thing, and we notice a pod of orcas swimming with the ferry's wake. Which is very cool, but not that unusual. If you're familiar with the dimensions of an orca fin, you know they're about 4 to 6 feet in height and look like big black spikes coming out of the water. They travel and hunt in pods of anywhere between 15 to 40 whales. Apex predators, the beautiful demon murderers of the sea. Top of the food chain. So we saw a pod of orcas, counted them to be around 10 to 15, with some babies scattered in there. Very fun to watch. Took them a good 30 minutes to all go by. We tried to get pictures, but it was just dark enough that our phone cameras weren't much good. Another 30 or 40 minutes go by, and it's starting to get dark, and we're cold and sleepy, and just about ready to go in. No more orcas. Haven't seen one for like half an hour. And then one of the JV girls spots another one. So we all turn and look, but one dorsal fin is immediately followed by another, and another, and another, and then two more, and then two more after that in two separate rows. And they're taller, by a lot, and jagged, like some have whole chunks torn out of them. And they're all 8 to 10 feet high, and they're all attached to one creature. And we can just barely see its back slicing through the water, covered in these rows of spikes. And it just keeps coming. This thing is like 20 or 30 feet from the ferry, running parallel to it, and we are all transfixed. There's like 9 or 10 of us, and no one is saying a word, because we've all turned to look at a whale, and we are now all watching something that is horrifically, terrifyingly, obviously not a whale. Someone tries to take a picture, but it's too dark at this point, and the only reason we can see this thing is the light cast from ferry portholes. Tale as old as time when it comes to things that you really wish you had taken a picture of. But we all stand there, completely scared stiff and in awe, and we watch this thing just keep surfacing for a good 6 or 7 minutes, which means that whatever it was long, like 60 or 70 feet long, or longer, and covered in enormous spikes. Spikes that looked like they'd won thousands of battles with who knows what. It took what felt like an eternity for any of us to say anything after the last of it disappeared back into the strait. I mean, if you and like 8 of your friends had just seen something that all science had definitely pointed to not existing, and you had all seen the same exact thing, and it was very obviously trailing, hunting, not one, but 15 something apex predators, what do you even say to break that silence? That's the thing that eats me about the whole thing, is it was hunting. It was following them. It was literally hunting about 60 tons of toothy, angry, intelligent apex predators. Every once in a while, one of us will hit another one up and check in like, hey, do you remember this? Was I hallucinating? Did we all see the same insane, worldview-melting, terrifying thing that night? And the reason I know we did is because none of us talked about it after that. Not during the trip, not after, not to any of our friends, because how on earth do you even tell someone about something like that? Now, we have almost 10 years between us and that night, and I assume some of them have probably told people. I know I tell people, because I've seen a lot of stuff like that in Alaska, and I'm that person. And also, there's a very rich history among Native Alaskans of something that lives in and hunts in the waters around Kodiak, and it's important to tell its story, because someday it's going to eat a little too much plastic, and no one will ever watch it hunt a pod of orcas from a boat again.